The bully shoved his finger into Mike Tyson's chest and spat words about his mother so foul that the entire block went silent. Before anyone could blink, Tyson's fist cracked across the man's jaw like a thunderclap, sending him sprawling across the concrete as onlookers stumbled backward in disbelief. What happened in the next 60 seconds would become Brownsville legend, a story whispered about for decades. Mike Tyson grabbed the man by his collar and slammed him against the brick wall so hard the guy's teeth clicked together. The man's feet left the ground for a full second before Tyson pinned him there, one fist already cocked back, every vein in his forearm standing at attention. What happened in the next 45 seconds would become Brownsville legend, a story whispered about for decades, a story about what happens when you say the wrong name around the wrong man on the wrong night. But we need to rewind, not far. Just enough so you understand exactly how this fool ended up pressed against dirty Brooklyn brick with the most dangerous man on the planet deciding whether to rearrange his face. It was 1988. Tyson was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. 21 years old, undefeated, 35 wins, 31 by knockout. He could walk into any building in America and the air would shift. People straightened up, people moved aside. Not out of respect, though there was plenty of that, out of something deeper, the primal understanding that this man could end you. Now here's the thing. Nobody tells you about Mike Tyson in 1988. He was hurting, bad. His mentor, his father in every way that mattered, Customato, had died 3 years earlier. His marriage to Robin Givens was falling apart in front of cameras and tabloids. The people around him were draining his accounts, whispering in his ear, pulling him in 14 directions. He was the most powerful athlete on earth, and he was completely alone. So when Mike went back to Brownsville, he wasn't going back as the champ doing a victory lap. He was going back to feel something real, to walk the same cracked sidewalks he walked as a kid, to see faces that knew him before the belt, before the money, before the whole world learned his name. He pulled up in a black Mercedes. No entourage that night. Just him and a guy named Rory Holloway, one of the few people he still halfway trusted. They parked on Amboy Street, walked toward a corner store Tyson used to steal from when he was 10 years old. The owner, an old Dominican man named Victor, had long since forgiven the theft and now kept a framed photo of Tyson behind the register. Tyson wanted a grape soda and 5 minutes of normal. He didn't get either. Believe me, what went down in that store changed the trajectory of the entire night. Tyson walked in. Victor's face lit up. They exchanged a handshake that turned into a hug. Rory leaned against the counter, scanning the store out of habit. There were maybe 6 or 7 other people inside. A woman buying diapers, a couple teenagers near the chips, and then there was this guy. Big dude, maybe 6'3", 240, wearing a leather jacket even though it was warm out. He had 2 friends with him, both smaller, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. This big guy, let's call him what people on the block later called him, Big Mouth. He was holding a 40-ounce and talking loud enough to fill the whole store. He'd been drinking. You could tell from the way he swayed, the way his words came out slightly too round at the edges. Big Mouth recognized Tyson immediately. And here's where a normal person would do one of 2 things. Either go up respectfully and ask for a handshake, or mind their business and let the man buy his soda. Big Mouth did neither. He started talking to his boys, but loud, performatively loud, the kind of loud where you want everyone to hear. Yo, that's Mike Tyson. Iron Mike, the baddest man alive. He said it with air quotes you could practically see. Champ of the world, right? Big time. Tyson glanced over. Just a flick of the eyes. He'd dealt with 1,000 guys like this. Drunks who wanted to test the air around a famous man. He turned back to Victor, asked about his daughter, kept the conversation going. But Big Mouth wasn't finished. Not even close. He took 3 steps closer. His friends grabbed at his sleeve. He shrugged them off. You know what I heard, though? I heard little Mikey used to get beat up every day on these streets. Every single day. Crying, running home to mommy. Tyson's jaw tightened. His hand, the one reaching for his wallet, stopped moving. I'm telling you right now, that was the first warning. If you knew Tyson, if you'd spent any time around him, you'd know that when he went still, when that compact body stopped all motion, something very bad was loading up behind his eyes. But Big Mouth didn't know, or didn't care. The alcohol had him feeling 10 feet tall and fireproof. He kept pushing. running home to Mommy. Except Mommy was what? Out on the street doing her thing, right? Everybody knows that. Rory Holloway stepped forward. Yo, man, you need to walk away. Big Mouth held up his hands in mock surrender. I'm just talking, bro. Free country. I'm just saying what everybody from Brownsville already knows. He turned to face Tyson directly now, that 40-ounce swinging loose in his hand. Your mama was a... He didn't finish the word. He never got to finish the word. Tyson moved so fast that Victor, who was standing 3 feet away, later said he didn't see the first step. One moment Mike was at the counter. The next moment Big Mouth was airborne, his back crashing into a shelf of canned goods, beans and soup cans raining down around him. Tyson had crossed 8 feet of linoleum in what witnesses described as a single explosive lunge, grabbed the man by his jacket and the front of his shirt, and launched him. Get this. The man weighed 240 pounds. Tyson threw him the way you'd throw a bag of laundry. Big Mouth hit the shelf, bounced off, and stumbled forward. To his credit, or maybe to his stupidity, he didn't go down. He caught himself on a refrigerator case, beer bottles rattling inside. His 40-ounce shattered on the floor. He looked up at Tyson with the first flicker of real understanding crossing his face. Tyson was already on him again. He grabbed Big Mouth's collar with his left hand and drove him backward into the wall. That's where we came in. Feet off the ground, teeth clicking. The right fist cocked back with enough force loaded behind it to crack a cinder block. The store went dead silent. Nobody moved. The woman with the diapers pressed herself against the far wall. The teenagers froze mid-chew. Big Mouth's 2 friends looked like they were calculating how fast they could reach the door. Victor stood behind his counter with his mouth open, a handful of change suspended in mid-air, and Tyson held him there, pinned, his face inches from Big Mouth's face, close enough to bite, which, well, we all know that was in his repertoire. His breath was coming fast, not from exertion, but from something volcanic rising up through his chest. Say her name. Tyson's voice came out high and tight, that famous lisp making the words somehow more terrifying, not less. Say my mother's name again. Please, I'm asking you nicely. Say it one more time. Now you gotta understand this. Mark this moment. This was Mike Tyson being more restrained than he wanted to be. The fist was right there. The target was right there. Every instinct in his body, every reflex trained by Customato, every hour of heavy bag work and sparring, was telling him to fire that right hand and put this man's jaw in a different zip code. But something held him. Big Mouth's eyes were the size of golf balls. Up close, pinned against that wall, he could feel what fighters felt in the ring. The sheer density of Tyson's body, the heat coming off him, the understanding that this was a human weapon operating at a level most people couldn't comprehend. Big Mouth's bravado evaporated. You could watch it leave his body in real time, replaced by something raw and old and honest. Fear. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He tried again. I didn't mean... Tyson slammed him against the wall a second time. Not harder. Just a reminder. You don't know anything about my mother. You don't know what she went through. You don't know what I went through. Here's what nobody tells you about Lorna Mae Tyson. She raised 3 kids in Brownsville, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in America, on almost nothing. She worked. She struggled. She did what she had to do to keep her children alive in a place where children died on corners and in stairwells. She wasn't perfect. No parent in Brownsville was perfect. Survival wasn't about perfection. It was about waking up tomorrow. She died when Mike was 16. He never got to buy her a house. He never got to show her the belt. He never got to prove that the little boy everyone picked on, the kid they called Fairy Boy because of his lisp, the kid who watched strangers kill his pigeons just to make him cry, that he'd become something. By the time he became something, she was gone. That's what Big Mouth was mocking. That's the nerve he touched. Not just a mother's reputation, a wound that never closed. Tyson's right hand trembled. The knuckles were white. Every person in that store understood they were watching a man fight a war inside himself. Throw the punch and feel the satisfaction, the crack, the release, or hold it. Hold it and prove something different. Rory Holloway moved slowly toward them. Mike, come on. He ain't worth it. He's nobody. Tyson didn't look at Rory. Didn't blink. His eyes stayed locked on Big Mouth's face. Something shifted in his expression. The rage was still there, burning white-hot, but something else surfaced alongside it. Something that looked, and I swear this happened, almost like grief. "Mother was a good woman," Tyson said. "Quiet now, almost a whisper. She did everything she could for us. You don't get to talk about her. Not you, not anybody." He held Big Mouth against that wall for another 5 seconds. The longest 5 seconds anyone in that store had ever experienced. Then Tyson did something that nobody expected. He let go. Just opened his hand and stepped back. Big Mouth slid down the wall, his knees buckling, and sat on the floor among the fallen soup cans and broken glass. He was breathing hard, his leather jacket twisted sideways, a red mark already forming on his neck where Tyson's grip had been. Tyson stood over him. The fist slowly unclenched. He flexed his fingers, rolled his neck, and then turned his back on the man entirely. Walked to the counter. Looked at Victor, who was still frozen with that handful of change. "Can I get that grape soda, Vic?" "Trust me when I tell you." Victor nearly dropped every coin in his hand. He reached into the cooler with shaking fingers, pulled out a grape Fanta, and set it on the counter. Tyson put down a $5 bill. Victor tried to make change. Tyson waved him off. Behind them, Big Mouth was getting to his feet. His friends had finally materialized, each one grabbing an arm, pulling him toward the door. He looked like a man who'd just stared into something he couldn't name. His eyes were wet, whether from the impact or from the humiliation or from the sudden understanding that he'd been about 3 pounds of trigger pressure away from a destroyed face. Nobody could say. One of his friends hissed at him. "What is wrong with you, man? That's Mike Tyson." Mike Tyson. Big Mouth said nothing. He let himself be dragged out the door. The bell above it jingled, a sound so ordinary and small in the aftermath of what had just happened that it was almost absurd. No, really, think about that for a second. A little bell. Ding ding. The kind of sound you hear in a sitcom. And it followed the exit of a man who just narrowly avoided being the subject of a police report and an emergency room intake form. Tyson cracked open the Fanta, took a long drink, set it down on the counter and looked at Victor. "Sorry about the mess, Vic." Victor shook his head rapidly. No, champ. Don't worry. I'll clean. Don't worry about nothing." Tyson reached into his pocket and pulled out a fold of cash, peeled off what witnesses later said was several $100s, set it on the counter for the shelf. "And the cans, and your trouble." Victor tried to refuse. Tyson closed the man's fingers around the money. No words, just that gesture. Then he picked up his soda and walked toward the door. Now, here's where the story takes a turn that most people don't know about. And this is the part that separates what happened from just another celebrity confrontation into something that people in Brownsville still talk about when the subject of Mike Tyson comes up. Tyson walked outside. Rory was right behind him, already talking about getting in the car and leaving before anything else happened. But Tyson stopped on the sidewalk. He was looking across the street. Big Mouth was there, leaning against a parked car. His friends were trying to pull him away, but he'd stopped. He wasn't being aggressive anymore. He was just standing there, looking at the ground, his shoulders slumped. He looked smaller somehow, even though nothing about his physical dimensions had changed. Tyson crossed the street. "Listen to me." Rory nearly had a cardiac event right there on Amboy Street. He grabbed for Tyson's arm. Tyson shrugged him off without breaking stride. Rory stood on the sidewalk with his hands on his head, watching. Big Mouth's friends saw Tyson coming and scattered a few feet in each direction, creating space they wanted no part of filling. Big Mouth looked up. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Resignation, maybe. Like whatever was coming, he'd earned it. Tyson stopped 3 feet in front of him. "What's your name?" Big Mouth blinked. "What? Your name? What is it?" "Darren." "Darren, you from around here?" "Yeah." "Sutter Avenue." Tyson nodded slowly. He took another sip of his Fanta. The gesture was so casual, so domestic, that it seemed to come from a different universe than the man who'd been holding Darren off the ground 60 seconds earlier. "Sutter Avenue. I know Sutter. Used to run through there when guys from Howard chased me." "You got kids, Darren?" Darren swallowed. "2. A boy and a girl." Tyson's expression changed. Something softened around his eyes. Not the rage disappearing, but something existing alongside it. He nodded again. Then you know. You know what it means when somebody talks about your mother. You know what that does in here. He tapped his own chest with the bottom of the Fanta bottle. Your kids love their grandmother? Darren's jaw worked. He looked away. When he looked back, his eyes were red. Yeah, they do. Then we understand each other. Tyson extended his left hand. Not a fist, an open hand. I want you to picture this. The heavyweight champion of the world. A man who had just physically dominated another man, without even throwing a real punch, standing on a Brownsville sidewalk offering a handshake to the guy who'd insulted his dead mother. This is the part that doesn't make it into the highlight reels. This is the part that tabloids never printed because it doesn't sell papers. But this is the part that matters. Darren looked at the hand, looked at Tyson's face, and somewhere in whatever circuit of his brain was still functioning through the adrenaline and the alcohol and the shame, he made the only smart decision he'd made all night. He took it. They shook hands, one firm pump. Tyson held the grip for an extra beat, leaned in slightly, and said something that only Darren could hear. Nobody else caught it. Not Rory, not the friends, not the small crowd that had started gathering on the sidewalk. Whatever it was, Darren's face crumbled. Not in pain, in something deeper. He nodded quickly, pressed his lips together, and when Tyson released his hand, Darren turned and walked away fast, wiping his face with the back of his sleeve. His friends hurried after him, shooting looks back at Tyson that were equal parts terror and reverence. Tyson stood on the sidewalk for a moment, finishing his Fanta. Rory approached carefully, the way you'd approach a generator that might still be running hot. Mike, what did you say to him? Tyson crushed the empty can in his fist, a casual gesture, but the aluminum folded flat like it was made of paper. Told him to go home and hug his kids. And that was it. That was the line. Under 15 words, no explanation needed, no follow-up, no victory speech. Just a man who'd been forged in the worst fire a childhood can produce, who'd lost his mother before he could give her anything, telling another man to hold on to what he still had. Rory drove them home. Tyson sat in the passenger seat and didn't say a word for 20 minutes. Rory knew better than to push it. The streetlight slid across Tyson's face as they moved through Brooklyn, and if you'd looked at him from outside the car, you wouldn't have seen the champion. You wouldn't have seen Iron Mike, the baddest man on the planet, the youngest heavyweight champion in history. You'd have seen a 21-year-old kid who missed his mom. Now, let me tell you what happened after, because every story has ripples, and this one's ripples traveled further than anyone expected. Word spread through Brownsville fast. By the next morning, the story was on every stoop and in every barber shop. But here's what's remarkable. The story that spread wasn't Mike Tyson almost killed a guy in Victor's store. The story that spread was Mike Tyson could have killed a guy in Victor's store and chose not to. That distinction matters. Pay attention to it. In a neighborhood where violence was currency, where strength was measured by how much damage you were willing to do, Tyson had demonstrated something that recalibrated the equation. He'd shown that the most dangerous man in the room had the power to destroy and the discipline not to. That the real flex wasn't the fist, it was the open hand afterward. Victor never fixed the shelf. I'm dead serious. He left it dented. Put a little sign next to it that said, Iron Mike was here. It became a landmark. People would come into the store, buy their stuff, and on the way out, touch the dent in the shelf. For luck, for connection, for the bragging rights of saying they'd seen the spot where Tyson ragdolled a man twice and then bought a grape Fanta. And Darren? Here's the part that makes this story more than just a confrontation. Darren stopped drinking. Not immediately, not overnight. But within a few months, people on Sutter Avenue noticed the change. He stopped hanging out on corners. He started picking his kids up from school. Someone asked him what happened, what changed, and all he'd say was, I had a conversation. Years later, a local reporter doing a piece on Brownsville tracked Darren down. By then, he was working maintenance at a school in East New York, had been sober for over a decade. The reporter asked about the incident with Tyson. Darren was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I was the worst version of myself that night. Drunk, stupid, talking trash about a man's mother who wasn't alive to defend herself. And the person I did it to, the one person on earth with the most right to put me in the hospital, he shook my hand and told me to go be a father. That messed me up worse than any punch could have. Because a punch, you recover from. What he did, that stays with you. Here's what gets me about this story. We talk about Mike Tyson, and we talk about knockouts. We talk about Spinks in 91 seconds. We talk about the combinations that move faster than thought, the uppercuts that separated men from consciousness, the fear he installed in opponents before they ever stepped in the ring. All of that is real. All of that is part of the legend. But this moment, in a corner store in Brownsville, surrounded by soup cans and broken glass and a terrified bodega owner, this is the moment that tells you who Mike Tyson actually is. Not a monster. Never a monster, despite what the tabloids wanted you to believe. A kid from nowhere who got hurt early and often, who learned to fight because the world gave him no other choice, who lost the people he loved before he could prove to them that their sacrifice meant something, and who carried that pain in his fists every single day of his life. When Darren, said those words about Lorna Mae Tyson, he wasn't just insulting a woman. He was prodding the deepest wound in Mike Tyson's body. A wound that no amount of money, no championship belt, no mansion or car or entourage could ever close. The wound of a boy who never got to say thank you to the woman who kept him alive. And Tyson's response, the grab, the slam, the cocked fist, and then the release, the soda, the handshake, the quiet words, that response contained everything. The rage he'd earned, the discipline Cuss taught him, the grief he carried. And somewhere, buried deep under all of it, a mercy he didn't owe anyone. You want to know why people in Brownsville still tell this story? It's not because of the violence. Brownsville has seen plenty of violence. It's because of the restraint. It's because the most dangerous man they'd ever produced came back to their streets and showed them that power isn't just about what you can do. It's about what you choose not to do. Now, real quick, if this story hit you somewhere, if you felt something when Tyson opened that hand instead of closing it, do me a favor. Hit subscribe. Ring the notification bell. Because I tell stories that nobody else tells, the ones that live in the spaces between the headlines, and I do it every single week. That's a promise. Let me land this. Mike Tyson went on to lose fights. He went to prison. He bit Evander Holyfield's ear. He blew through $300 million. He battled addiction, depression, and a public image that swung between legend and cautionary tale. The world tried to reduce him to a punchline, a meme, a cautionary tale about talent wasted. But the world didn't know about the night in Victor's store. The world didn't know that the same fists that knocked out 35 men in a boxing ring unclenched on a Brownsville sidewalk because a man with 2 kids needed to go home and be a father. The world didn't know about the dent in the shelf that Victor turned into a shrine. The world didn't know about Darren, sober and steady, picking up his kids from school every day, carrying a handshake in his memory that weighed more than any punch. Tyson himself barely talked about it. When an interviewer once asked him about his temper, about the rage that seemed to simmer beneath every interaction, Tyson said something that stopped the room. People think the hard part is hitting someone. The hard part is not hitting someone. The hard part is standing there with everything in you screaming to let go and choosing to hold on to yourself instead. That's the fight nobody sees, and that's the one that matters. He was talking about more than boxing. He was talking about a corner store in Brownsville and a man named Darren, and a mother named Lorna Mae who never got to see her son become a champion, but who raised him well enough that, when the moment came, when every justification for violence was right there in his hand, he chose something else. And you know what? That's Iron Mike. Not the knockouts, not the scandals, not the face tattoo or the tiger or any of the spectacle. The real Iron Mike is a 21-year-old kid standing on Amboy Street with an empty grape Fanta, telling a stranger to go hug his children. That's the legend, not the fist. The open hand. That's what Brownsville remembers. And now, so will you.